Good day, Philadelphia sports fans, and welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, where today we mourn the passing of the 2015 NFL season for the Philadelphia Eagles. A season that was full of high hopes and expectations, perhaps a playoff victory or two, and ultimately coming very short at this point in the season with Chip Kelly's 2015 Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Tyler Werner Show, and essentially, the funeral for the 2015 season for the Philadelphia Eagles, as the intro may have hinted at. And as I hinted at last week on the Tyler Werner Show, heading into this Thanksgiving, what would be a Thanksgiving debacle versus the Detroit Lions. I basically said, at that point, it seemed like the team had no fight in them against Tampa Bay. And they whimper out of that game, and they whimper their way over to Detroit, where they just get their doors blown off even worse than they did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's pretty much enough said. Enough for me right there. I basically said they lose to Detroit. The season in theory is basically over as it is. I spent an hour at nauseum last week, essentially just basically pointing out. It's amazing that we're sitting here, or at least I'm sitting here. The month of December of football ahead of us here, 5 games left for the Philadelphia Eagles, and with 5 games, we're talking about Chip Kelly not being here next year. We're talking about this team already being done, despite only being, in theory, 1 game behind the division-leading Washington Redskins and New York Giants, who are both at 5 and 6. I went at nauseum last week about how this division all season long has been sitting on a silver platter like a filet mignon for the taking for the Philadelphia Eagles. Which, by the way, we're, by most accounts, the favorite to win the NFC East this year. And obviously after that preseason, and they turned a lot of heads and everything else. But it was expected of them too. Pretty much by this. With the whole idea of tearing up the roster and everything else, and that Jeffrey Lurie giving Chip Kelly full power in the GM position, essentially. That it was necessary for Chip to fulfill his vision and everything of this team. It was back in, and of course we didn't really get any explanation at all until it was, it was like late March, and it was like Jeffrey Lurie out in the wilderness and having a press conference about why it was so necessary for Chip Kelly to have all this power. And they got, regardless of how much the moves he's made, they're 4 and 7, and they basically given up. It started obviously with Miami in that horrendous game. And look, I don't care that Bradford went down and that Sanchez is out there. When you get Sam Bradford, even though he was coming along a little bit and was progressing over the few weeks into that Miami game, the bottom line is the guy has a injury history, and that's the risk you take when you have Sam Bradford. That's about, not to mention behind that atrocious offensive line that Chip totally neglected the past couple of years to rebuild, and especially when a guy like Evan Mathis is gone, and they have journeyman offensive linemen to fill those shoes, not to mention Jason Peters might be done after this season. I mean, I don't know if he'd want any part of this regime going forward at this point. So I mean, we don't. I guess need I get started on this offensive line anymore, and the wide receiving core, and whatever else. I mean, again, I don't want to rehash things here that I basically said last week. I mean, at this point, it's just all. Now it's the rest of the season. I mean, the season's basically water under the bridge here. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose out. And as a matter of fact, I'm really ambivalent as to the result of any of these games the rest of the season. Like, it's now one of these things. Like, they're probably going to get their doors blown off against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots this week, whether Gronkowski is out there or not.
To me, those balls are perfect.
And I mean, the Patriots. I mean, again. I mean, they not to mention they're coming off of a loss to a frustrating overtime loss to the Denver Broncos, where, I mean, say what you want, but I mean, the Broncos certainly got a lot of things that went their way that game. Not to mention with Brady playing behind, making the best of no Gronkowski, no Julian Edelman, no Danny Amendola, no Dion Lewis, and basically, second string offensive line. But, that's still at the end of the day. I mean, either way, this Eagles team is dead in the water, and they're going to go up there and they're going to get their doors blown off against the New England Patriots. Probably a frustrated New England Patriots team that is at the least going to win 14 games this year. So yeah, I mean that puts the Eagles at 4-8. Buffalo, they're competing for at least a wild, they're competing for a wild card spot in the AFC, and they actually, they actually want to play. Even though record-wise they've been in a similar, I guess, area sort of as the Eagles. I mean, they're better than the Eagles now, obviously, but record-wise and everything. But unlike the Eagles, who have had opportunity after opportunity to take command in this division, just they just continue to not, while it sits there on a silver platter. And that's even more true after this week. After the Giants, who had a great chance to have a commanding lead in the division, lay an egg against the Washington Redskins. So now you got the Giants at 5-6. You got the Redskins at 5-6. The Cowboys 3-8, lost Tony Romo again. Re-injured his collarbone. So they're, they can stick a fork in their season, obviously. And, but as far as the Eagles concerned, I mean, it's sad because they're right there behind 2 5-6 teams. But even so, with 5 games left in the season, I still don't, against these crap teams in the division, the Giants, who they manhandled at home, not, mind you, and they've done, I mean, last year they beat twice, but still, it's like, and the Redskins, who you would have thought they were going to beat, and in a revenge situation later on in the season, but now it's just like, is this season now just water under the bridge for the Eagles, even if Sam Bradford's going to be back in the lineup next week? I mean, the defense, it's like they just quit. And I mean, I know that, I don't care who is out for the season, since, now there's like, Noah Carroll out for the season, and obviously Jordan Hicks was obviously the beginning of those big losses on defense and everything else. And
I think I just broke my leg.
But I mean, I guess that's the price you pay when that defense has to keep going out on the field, as the offense this season goes 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out. So far too often. So far too often. And speaking of that, if this organization in the past week or two has not become as big of a dumpster fire, I mean, Lane Johnson, obviously, about a week ago, basically kind of criticized the fan base initially, and then he kind of retracted it, which I got to think their Eagles PR department maybe, after he made the comments, maybe got to him a little bit like, we got to maybe bridge the gap a little bit here with this. But initially, which I look at what he said initially, because, the heat of the, it just, if it's going to roll off the tongue like that when you're asked about it, it's too bad, too late. He came out and he kind of just said there's no home field advantage for the Eagles to play. When we go 3 and out, we get booed and stuff like that, and we're still in the game and this and that. But apparently Lane doesn't get it. This Eagles offense was not they're doing the opposite of what they were expected to do. They were machine-like in the preseason, at least, the preseason, when you would at least, you think you're not game planning against one another. Maybe you're doing some trial runs of things. But after what looked like such a promising preseason, and that Chip had the right personnel finally, and which maybe at the end of the day they still had some holes at receiver and obviously the offensive line. It's one of these things when you go 3 and out time and time again on your home field, and you're falling behind time and time again, struggling on offense, when you go up 16-3 against the Dolphins at home, and then the rest of the game you just come out and lay an egg like you did on offense, I mean, you better believe this fan base, in a top five sports market, who doesn't have a Super Bowl ring and who constantly gets made fun of time and time again, whose fans have, who stand loyal by their team, rooting for Philly, and they don't, too much integrity to bandwagon to, whatever franchise, the Cowboys or the Giants or the Patriots or whatever team has however many rings, or the Steelers, who have 6 or 4 or 5 more rings than you guys do. If you don't, you play for Philadelphia, who doesn't have that Super Bowl ring, and who's as hungry as any other team in this league, as far as fan bases are concerned, and desperate for a championship. You should know that. You got to know. What do you expect? You come out, in a game and you have a third straight 3 and out, and it's like the however many weeks in a row where you come out 3 and however many games it's been this season where the Eagles have come out so flat in the first quarter, or have come out right away to a 3 and out. You're playing in your home stadium where you're a heavy favorite, and you're going 3 and out. What do you expect? Do you expect the fans to applaud that? Oh, all right, get them next. No. This offense was supposed to be putting up on a regular basis 30 to 35 points a game. That's so. Oh, and by the way, Lane, you were, getting caught with deliberate face mask penalties and just kind of got, ran all over on Thursday on Thanksgiving against the Detroit Lions. So, I guess that kind of says enough, too, about, what kind of leg you have to stand on as far as your argument goes. Oh, by the way, did I mention that I was actually when I was an intern at 93.3 WMMR, when the Eagles were just about to head into training camp in the preseason. I actually got. They came in. We were filming like this segment where it was him, Connor Barwin, Jason Kelsey, who has also had a pretty disappointing season and just a lot of brain farts when it comes to snapping the football this season. And a defensive rookie who I don't even know if he has even been seen the field. So I'm not, I've kind of met the guy here and everything, and that's a whole other thing of itself. And ironically here, a few months later, after helping film on the Preston Steve Show, 93.3 WMMR, kind of this loose and good, nice, I guess, little like rendition of Family Feud on the show. Yakking it up a little bit here. Ironically, here I am, about 4 months later, at a season I'm just kind of like not totally invested in here. Lane Johnson himself is stinking it up on the field. Just fresh off of saying something, and I guess being out of touch with the, how the Philadelphia Eagles fan base has no championship to hang their hat on and has this huge disappointing season to, I guess, basically mourn at this point, like we're doing here on the Tyler Werner Show today, on this funeral edition of the 2015 Eagles season, basically. Do I have to lay it out anymore? They lose to the Patriots, 4-8. Obviously, the Cardinals, 2 weeks later, definitely. 4-9. The Bills will probably going to lose to the. 6-10. Between the Redskins and the Giants, okay, 7-9 can win this division at this point. We'll put it that way, and one of those teams is going to go 7-9. Maybe even both of those teams go 7-9. But the point is, the Eagles, between division records and just, I don't think they're going to finish 7-9 to begin with, but they're not going to get the job done. That's the bottom line. They're done. They've clearly quit on this that's pretty much it. It's a funeral for the 2015 NFL season, and perhaps for Chip Kelly and his tenure here for the I don't know. At the end of the day, Jeffrey Lurie, I said last week, it's hard for them to just, I can't envision Jeffrey Lurie just, oh, you know what, Chip? No. If Chip stays here and is back next year for the Philadelphia Eagles, or he does get, I know what Jeffrey Lurie is gonna. You can basically call what Jeffrey Lurie's going to say. Oh, well, he needs more time for his new acquisitions to, get more acclimated to this team and everything. And just guard. It's like, well, no, he needs to go out and get some offensive linemen. And he needs to go out and get some more receivers and this and that. And maybe, a more, quarterback that is going to fit his system more, since Marcus Mariota's not here. And the only option, obviously, I've said, perhaps, that gives him the best chance is getting Colin Kaepernick in the offseason. Because Bradford, at the end of the day, Sanchez, they kind of limit the playbook here. Even if Bradford, has come along a little bit, no, he hasn't done enough at this point to get his job. And not to mention, he's just got, an injury history. So, I could see that. But last week, in what was a whirlwind week heading into Thanksgiving, that Thanksgiving game with Detroit, that the Eagles basically said, yeah, we're done this year. Like, we're not even going to show up. We're going to get beat 45. We're going to basically kind of set a franchise record, essentially, in back-to-back blowout losses like that. And we're going to let the Detroit Lions put 45 up on us. And so, essentially, last week there was, report, and this week too, like, last week there was the Adam Schefter report that came out. Some people took it a little out of context, but he basically kind of insinuated that it sounds like between, both sides, with referring to Chip and the fan base, essentially, the Philadelphia Eagles fan base, are tired of each other. It's basically what Schefter insinuated.
I am pissed off.
Are we not? It's pretty much a given that the majority of this fan base, with this disappointing season, which, by the way, it feels like only yesterday, as we were heading into the preseason, where I was sitting here. This is the most important Eagles season I can ever remember. And look look how it's shaping up. So you factor all that in, and the fan base being sick of Chip. That's a given. No surprise there. 4-7, with the possibility at this point of just losing out, or finishing 5-11 maybe. Yeah. Now to hear Schefter say Chip Kelly is sick of the, I guess in turn, the fan base and the media here. All right, well, you can kind of tell that sometimes in the way he handles his press conferences, obviously, since he basically, it's like he might as well just give the finger to the media and basically the fan base for never having any real, explanation as to what is going on with this team and how it's just all going down the drain this season. So he's tired of the. Well, good, because like I said, obviously with 4-7, and just like what feels like 2012 all over again, except not with Andy Reid.
Time's yours.
It's just Chip Kelly here, and so it's one of these things. At the end of the season, if he's tired with the fan base, and the fan base is tired with him, then obviously that puts Jeffrey Lurie in a bit of a predicament, because Chip has 3 years left on his contract and whatever. It's one of these things where maybe, what if they had a mutual, sit down, and kind of like a mutual parting ways. Because again, as far as the fan base is concerned, Chip Kelly leaves this year or whatever, whether he goes to college or somewhere else. There's, at this point, the way it's looking, nobody is, at this point, in fact, a lot of people are now in favor of that, including myself. And it's like one of these things, he goes and it's like, all right, see ya, don't let the door hit you on the way out or whatever, so long, farewell. Carry on. But anyways, it could be one of those things, because I can't see Jeffrey Lurie just firing him out of the blue. It would have to be something where it's like a mutual parting ways situation, where Chip doesn't like it here. Hey, he doesn't have to be here. Because quite frankly, the fan base isn't liking that he's here either.
Thanks, guys.
And he will not be missed. Wherever he goes. And I think Chip Kelly needs done, or Jeffrey Lurie, would have to be blind not to see that. So, at this point, I mean,
That's exactly right.
It's, a mutual thing where, everybody can kind of win. Chip Kelly doesn't like it here. Good. We don't, because we don't like it. And it sounds like, there's an anonymous, I guess, player who's been injured. I wonder who it could be, but who could have come back this past week but didn't want to play, kind of thing. For Chip, didn't want to play for Chip Kelly and everything.
I'm not dealing with this today.
And so, I want, maybe was that Jason Peters? I mean, who knows? But clearly, it's as if Chip Kelly has lost this team. He's continually not taking responsibility for himself. I mean, in the whole, execution, players just got to execute and stuff, and just not taking responsibility. Now you can see the revolt. Now you can see it, the rebellion against Chip Kelly, and just kind of losing the locker room for the most part, losing a big portion of the locker room. I mean, back to back, 45-17 / 45-13, back to back games like that against mediocre or worse teams, and a terrible loss against the Dolphins before that. I mean, to me, that tells me enough about the state of this locker room, and that these guys, they're just out there basically, collecting their paychecks at this point.
He wants your money!
I mean, all you have to do is see what they've been. I mean, they're not even. It's like they're not finishing tackles, and it's just like they don't want to be out there. Body language and just everything. That's pretty much that. I mean, you can see it in their demeanor. I mean, that's the bottom line. And of course, only now after they lose, they get destroyed by Detroit on Thanksgiving. Only now is when Chip Kelly kind of has been humbled a little more, and it says that I gotta, take more responsibility. I gotta put my players in better position, and I gotta do a better job. Sound a little more like Andy Reid, of course.
That was like sweet and sour pork, right?
I don't know. Maybe now he's, it's like, oh, now that you're 4-7, now that you get your doors blown off for the second week in a row, now that this team clearly is not playing really for anything anymore, it seems, even though this weak division has been right there for the taking week after week. Only now does he, I guess, see that. I don't know. It's just a disaster at this point. And whether you thought they would, go 8-8 or something, or even that, who thought that they could be in a situation like they are now, where they could just maybe lose out, go 4-12, and Chip Kelly could be out of here, maybe by a mutual, disbanding, I guess. Or I don't know. Maybe he does go to college. I don't know. He denied that in his press conference yesterday when he was asked, but that doesn't mean his agent maybe isn't in talks with college, isn't talking to, colleges out there. I mean, that's one thing. Now, you want to talk about maybe a win-win, maybe for everybody here, a win-win opportunity. It's been brought up by, Mike Massinelli, of course, on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Right tonight.
For instance, it's been done in the past where coaches have been traded for draft picks. Ladies and gentlemen, Chip Kelly, Jeffrey Lurie, think about this. Chip Kelly gets traded to Tennessee, will be in need of a head coach next year. Chip Kelly can coach at the pro level the guy he handpicked at Oregon, Marcus Mariota, to run his offense at Oregon, and we couldn't have him here in Philadelphia, but you can go to Tennessee, who needs a head coach and maybe needs the right, guy to get the best out of Marcus Mariota over in Tennessee. Reunited, and it feels so good, is what they can have there in Tennessee. That's great. Wouldn't that be good for Chip? Because I'll tell you what, it would certainly be good for us here in Eagleville if, of course, we can give Chip Kelly to Tennessee, or the Eagles can give Chip Kelly to Tennessee, and in return, get some draft picks. At least a first round, because obviously Tennessee, the top 5, maybe a top 2 draft pick in next year's draft. The Eagles, of course, they lose out. The Eagles might have a top 5 draft pick to begin with, but the Eagles, you give Chip Kelly over to Tennessee, you can get another top 5 pick. I mean, right there. Boom, boom. Perhaps 2 top 5 picks. I don't know, maybe the Eagles get more, but if it at this point we could give the Tennessee Chip Kelly, and in return a first round draft pick, which would essentially be a top 5. Sign me up. Sign me up. The Eagles can get a new head coach. Maybe that can, new coach, somewhat of a regime change. Who knows? But perhaps a coach, maybe with, maybe the next up and coming defensive or offensive coordinator in the NFL who has NFL experience, who can come here and maybe get more out of what is already here. And not to mention 2 top 5 picks in the draft next year or this coming off season, and maybe more draft picks. And there you go. That could maybe bridge the gap a little bit. Who knows? I mean, sign me up. Sign me up for that. The point is that at this point, there's really the Eagles. Okay, the Eagles have clearly quit, it seems, the last couple of weeks. And essentially the fan base is basically quitting. And it seems as though the fan base cares more than the Eagles team does at this point. But, and with that in mind, since we seem to care more, all right, we want this team to be more successful. It seems as though that might happen with Chip Kelly not here anymore. That's I mean, unfortunately, there's some contracts now that the Eagles are bound to. Byron Maxwell is not, obviously worth what he's getting paid for. DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, Matthews, of course, got hurt, wasn't playing last week, but Murray has not been as effective with the offense. He's at 4 yards per carry even this season. Obviously, a significant step down from his 4.7 last season. Of course, his 1,800 plus yards of just on the ground alone, as far as rushing on the ground goes. So behind a much inferior offensive line to what he was playing with last season, DeMarco Murray doesn't look as worth, what he's getting paid. Again, I've continued to say I wouldn't sell him short. But this offensive line, they're not creating holes, and these outside zone plays that Chip Kelly is running with DeMarco Murray, it's just not right. And you brought the guy here to run, between the tackles, and, well, they're not really able to do that with this offensive line that's in shambles. So, that's that. But, like I said, you get a different guy here, new mentality, new, maybe a new spark in the locker room with, this coaching change, and maybe some other coaching changes, who knows. Maybe a more conventional system, maybe something that'll fit this talent more, with maybe an improved offensive line next year. Maybe they add a better receiver. I don't know. Quarterback-wise, remains to be a question mark. But, it could... you can really, at this point, see... Perhaps, you can see the benefit in moving... it's like... Mentally, this fan base is, ready to move on. And as it sounded from the Adam Schefter report last week, it sounds like Chip Kelly's kind of tired of this place too. But that's on him. Because, you got to know what you sign up for when you play for the Philadelphia Eagles or when you coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. And this fan base, who all these years, no Super Bowl rings, but for years have stood by this team, despite other people bandwagon other teams. No, we're Eagles fan all the way. That's the only way I can enjoy a Super Bowl, if it's with this team that represents this geographical area of Pennsylvania, or maybe, northern Delaware, depending where exactly how close you are to the city of Philadelphia kind of deal there. That's the bottom line. I mean, you got to know that it's really not sunshine and rainbows here when there's no Super Bowl ring to hang your hat on at the end of the day. Meanwhile, you're playing in a division where every other team has multiple Super Bowl rings. So, I mean, it should just be common knowledge here. All right? When the rest of the division has 12 Super Bowl rings and your team doesn't have any, understand that. Understand where, what city you're coaching in here. The Fighting City of Philadelphia. The Fighting City of Philadelphia, and yet it's like this football team has no fight whatsoever. That's about.
What's the matter with you?
Yeah. So that's pretty much a wrap on that. Again, I mean, I'm amazed that at this point in the season here with the Tyler Werner Show, I'm sitting here and not to break down games, because there's not really anything to break down here with games other than the Eagles are just breaking down the last couple of weeks. How's that? That pretty much sums it all up. And this regime is pretty much breaking down as it is. So, yeah, again, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. 45-13, Eagles lose. What is there really to talk about other than they got spanked yet again, and that this team is they're on dead batteries. That's the bottom line. Guys out for the season and this and that, and that's fine and dandy. I guess so much for sports science and everything, and
Was that like a wise ass comment?
maybe the show's been full of those comments, but no, to me it's just all kind of common sense at this point. And again, it's just that's pretty much that. There's no game to they get their doors blown off against the Patriots this week, and it's like, what am I going to talk about next week? Well, yeah, the Eagles lost again, and was anybody surprised? I don't know. We'll see. But in the next video in the Tyler Werner Show, as always, we'll go around the NFL with other teams, and the Eagles again. Pretty much dead in the water as far as the rest of the season goes, and it's pretty sad because again, the rest of the division stinks, and yet the Eagles, they can't. Unfortunately, they can't be the team that will stink the least in this division. That's I guess that's the sad, inconvenient truth of it all, but nevertheless, the truth. And furthermore, the truth basically says, for the most part, we're looking for life after Chip Kelly at this point. That's basically what we're looking at here in the Tyler Werner Show, and I guess what we'll continue to look at on the Tyler Werner Show as this Eagles team, they go up to New England this coming week to face, probably an angry New England Patriots team that is probably just going to tear this Eagles team apart on defense, limb from limb, and, what else do you expect? It's pretty much the bottom line. So
this is the end of this subject for me for a long time.
So yes, none other than Bill Belichick will wrap it up with, this edition of the Tyler Werner Show with that in mind. So, thanks for tuning in. If you're still, I guess, even plugged in to the Eagles team at all. But, again, as I say, perhaps life after Chip Kelly, that comes our way, then maybe it gives people more of a reason to plug back in to this Eagles team. Especially with some of these players on the roster maybe plugging back in to playing football for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number one box office attraction, number one WWE superstar, multi-time WWE champion, Brock Lesnar.
Time to revamp your office space, eh? Looking for an interior decorator? Look no further than Brock Lesnar.
Now that's the way a real man uses a sledgehammer.
Out with the old, in with the new. Give Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman a call.
Mr. Lesnar, you're the future of interior decorator. Kelly, we're done.
The champion of game day catering is the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show, Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs.
We prepare our balls over time, and that's the essence of the preparation.
On top of that, another trademark of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs is Brady's signature rubbing process.
When I pick balls out, to me, they're perfect. I don't want anyone touching the balls after that. I don't want anyone rubbing them. To me, those balls are perfect.
What is a concern is the texture of the balls, and again, that's the point that Tom hit on hard.
The champion of all game day catering dishes is Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show.
What is it about good sex that makes me have to crap?
Pump and Dump. Never stop the pumping, always keep her satisfied. Pump and Dump.
You really jarred something loose, Tiger.